Is this job something you thought about for a long time wanting to have?
Well, I've wanted to give back to my country in various ways over the years, and in fact, I actually was considered for this position in the first Trump
Yep.
administration, and was offered some other positions as well. And I really am passionate about civil rights, and so what I decided to do instead is form my own civil rights nonprofit outside, and that's been successful. Center for American Liberty, that goes on, as well as my law firm. But it is a dream come true to be able to serve the United States and to serve in this administration. And I have a tremendous team of patriots who are working with me. And so, I can't say an ill word about it.
I've read so much and listened to so much of what you've said since you started the job, and you pay homage to the history of the department and of the division, and so many of the things that are you would share with the people who've held this job in Democratic administrations. But you also have some issues and some points of view that are different than say the Biden administration. How would you say for people who aren't lawyers and don't follow this stuff closely, what's the difference in orientation between the Trump Civil Rights Division and the Biden Civil Rights Division?
Well, that's a great question, Mark. And there's a huge difference. There's even a pretty big difference between the first Trump administration and this Trump administration. And so just looking at the Biden side, for the Biden administration has been squarely in, you might call it the third term of the Obama administration. It has been squarely on the far left periphery of radicalism in terms of civil rights. And civil rights has gone from meaning what it meant in 1957 when the Civil Rights Division was first created and the civil rights statutes began to be passed, the modern civil rights statutes. And they were about equality. They were about remedying existing or fairly recent discrimination that provided barriers to access, mainly to African Americans and then to women and people with disabilities. What civil rights has come to mean in the modern Democratic Party parlance is a results-oriented system of spoils, really a form of Marxism that guarantees group outcomes, group preferences, and group discrimination against the formerly advantaged people. And to me, that's squarely out of step with both the wording as well as the intent of the civil rights laws and, of course, of our Bill of Rights and Constitution. And so our focus at the Civil Rights Division has been to actually go back to those words, that meaning, that intent, and that concept of a race-blind, color-blind, discrimination-free society. And so I don't, like some people would say that the so-called affirmative action is reverse discrimination. It's just discrimination in our viewpoint in this administration, and we're putting a stop to it. It's 2025. America can congratulate itself for being the most egalitarian, fair, and open society in the world. And we need to now be applying the same laws to everybody in our country equally with some base principles.
Well said. And again, that lays out the difference in so many ways. The division was created in the context of the civil rights movement, when a lot of the early mission was about seeing what I've heard you say, you acknowledge existed, a challenge for African Americans to vote and exercise other rights equally at the time, because in 1957, people who are young may not believe it, but 1957, not that long ago, there were problems for housing and employment and voting. Now, as we've progressed to where we are, do you see any role for the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department to help Black Americans, or is there really no area where that's still necessary?
Well, of course. I mean, and to be clear, I've testified in the Senate when I was confirmed that I saw vestiges of that racism in the 1970s in rural North Carolina, where I grew up. There was a sign from the Ku Klux Klan welcoming people to my small town of Smithfield, North Carolina. It's not there today, and that's the key point. And so African Americans, Asian Americans, whites, men, women, they actually all encounter incidents of discrimination in our country today, incidents. And we absolutely have helped African American plaintiffs in this Civil Rights Division. If someone attacks somebody in a hate crime, shouting the N-word, if there's a pattern and practice of discrimination that is against a particular race or gender or religion, we've seen quite a bit of that in the United States in the last couple of years. We take action on that. We've taken disability cases. We've done a lot of traditional civil rights enforcement. But what's different is we're not assuming that because someone is a particular color, they're advantaged or disadvantaged. We look at the facts in each case, and that's a new and to some people disturbing perspective.
Yeah. Tell me what your view of the 10th Amendment is. I'll read it for people who don't know. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, or reserved to the states respectively or to the people. As the 10th Amendment pertains to federal enforcement of civil rights law, how do you think about the 10th Amendment?
Well, that's a good question. I will start by saying that I was the president of the largest chapter of the Federalist Society in the United States in law school at the University of Virginia, a wonderful law school education that I received there. And that is a central tenet of the Federalist Society and federalism. That's exactly federalism in a nutshell, which is that we have a system of a republic where most of the rights are reserved for the states. But the civil rights movement, the Reconstruction era statutes and, then the modern civil rights movement did cross over that barrier. And, we've had successive court rulings, including, importantly, Brown v. Board of Education, that applied these federal civil rights statutes to the states. And in fact, most of our work traditionally in the civil rights movement has been applying our federal civil rights statutes to state governments, state law enforcement, and state officials. Because if you look historically, those were the people who were standing in the way of the original intended beneficiaries of the civil rights movement from enjoying their full rights. It was sheriffs, it was school departments, it was governors, and it was the police. And so we still look at that now. I'm investigating the city of Chicago for racist hiring practices. I'm investigating Hennepin County, Minnesota for using race in plea agreement sentencing and so forth. And so we do believe in federalism, but courts have made some exceptions to that in the incorporation of the 13th Amendment to the states and its application. And so quite a bit of our work. But a lot of times people come to me and they think that the Civil Rights Division is legal aid or something for the whole country. And, unless I have jurisdiction, which is pretty limited, I cannot help. And there is a wonderful civil rights edifice and civil rights lawyers. I was one of them in private practice and in the states. California has some great civil rights laws, the Bain Act, the Unruh Act. They're better than some federal civil rights laws in some ways. And so I do encourage people to make use of all of the federal laws and state laws that are out there to help them.
There's a real concern right now that the continued divide between the Trump White House and the Federal Reserve is putting us all behind the curve again. Will the Fed be able to take the right action at the right time, or are we going to be looking at a potential economic slowdown? So what does all this mean for your savings? There's an opportunity now. Consider diversifying with gold through Birch Gold Group. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation or global uncertainty, or when there is high inflation. Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you've got an IRA or an old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or you can buy some gold to keep in your safe at home. First, you need to get educated, and that's where Birch Gold comes in. They will send you a free info kit about gold. Just text the word NEXT to the number 989898. Again, text NEXT to 989898. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. That way, if the Fed falls behind the curve again for America, at least you can stay ahead for yourself.